until March 9th. Next week's webinar will also be with Ross, and the topic is how to make your viewers your customers. You can sign up for that webinar as well as the others on our Eventbrite page. Thanks again for joining us and enjoy the webinar.
Hi everyone. So what I want everyone to do, I know there's a chat or a questions section, and I just want to make sure that everyone can hear me okay and that you guys can see my screen. So if you can just go into there and just say yes to make sure that you can see my screen or that you can hear me, then we are good to go. Great. I see Kara, Wes, Greg, Carrie. Thank you guys for jumping on. Denise, Monica, we've got a great room. I'm looking forward to chatting with you guys. So what we're going to be talking about first is during this webinar essentially is what we call laying the foundation for your brand on social media. And what that's really about is identifying the fact that, okay, the internet has changed the game. And we need to have a presence there. So what we're going to be talking about is how you can ensure that the presence that you have on social media, that presence that you have online in general, is a presence that is worth listening to. It's a presence that is engaging, that captivates your audience, and it's a presence that really represents your brand very well. So that's what we're going to be talking about today. We're going to be laying a lot of the foundation work. If you are more advanced, a lot of this may be a refresher. But I do think that in a lot of the stuff that we're going to talk about, you will be able to take a few insights away that you may not have heard before. So even if you are advanced, you've been in this space for a while, you've had a Facebook page, you've had a Twitter account, I think that you will be able to take a few insights out of this presentation that will help you understand the importance of laying a great foundation for your brand online and how you can tell your story more effectively. So the first thing that you have to do, similar to building a house, is you have to build a blueprint. So you need to understand exactly what it is you're trying to accomplish. What kind of house are you trying to build, so to speak? Most recently for me, became a homeowner for the first time. And the process itself was pretty stressful, but at the same time, it was very enjoyable. You go through the process and you get to check out a variety of different homes. You have to identify early on what's your budget, what you actually are looking for in your first home. And you have to understand the neighborhood. You have to understand a variety of different things. In the same situation, the same idea, it needs to be running through your head when you're thinking about your online presence. You need to be thinking about your budget. You need to be thinking about the type of environment in which your brand story is going to be told. You need to think about the actual audience in which when you're buying a home, you are the audience. But in this situation, your audience is going to be your customers. It's going to be the people who would come to your bed and breakfast. It's going to be the people who would come to your hotel, come to your restaurant, the people who buy your product or your service. So you have to understand what is the story that you're trying to tell. I know that a lot of you are in the tourism industry. Some of you have signed up for this and you're not directly in the tourism industry. So a lot of the examples you see today will be specifically around travel and tourism, but by all means, please feel free to apply the thinking and some of the thoughts that we share to any industry, whether you're in B2B, whether you're in technology, whether you're in marketing. I think that some of the overarching ideas that we're going to share today will allow you to kind of apply it to your industries, regardless of what space you're in. So the first question, when you start to kind of lay that foundation, is you have to ask yourself, what is your budget? And that's always a tricky question, but I think what you need to realize is that there's two things that you can spend. It's not always about spending thousands of dollars, hundreds of dollars to get a Facebook page up and running. It's not spending thousands of dollars to get a website. You can spend either money or you can spend time. And you can invest your time by learning the tricks of the trade like you're doing today. You've made the commitment to invest your time by attending this webinar. And you're investing your time to learn how you can be better at social media, to learn how you can be better in managing your online presence. And you can put in the hours to learn how to make adjustments to your website. You can put in the hours to learn how to be more effective on Twitter. You can make the investment to hire someone to do all of these things for you. And that's okay. But the reality is you have to be willing to make some type of commitment. If you're not willing to make a commitment into these channels, if you're not willing to make an investment of some sort, again, whether that's time or money, you are going to fail. You need to be willing to make some type of investment. And when I talk to operators and I talk to businesses, one of the biggest things that they mention is the fact that they either don't have a lot of money to invest into this or they don't have a lot of time. And don't get me wrong, I've run my own business. I've worked with lots of small businesses from all over the world, and I've seen the time constraints. I've seen the financial constraints that you may be up against. And what's key is that you identify things that you may be spending money on right now that aren't driving results. You might look at things that you're spending time on right now that aren't driving results, and you start to cut the fat. You start to put your efforts and your money into things that you know will drive results. And I think at the end of the day, you also have to consider when we talk about an online presence, when we talk about something like a website, the long term results is really where you need to allocate your attention and allocate your focus. Because if you make that purchase where you invest heavily into creating an amazing online experience for your customers, that's something that will be able to generate revenue for you for a very long time. So understand that, embrace that, and realize that an investment is crucial if you want to actually succeed when it comes to this online world. The next piece is to understand who you're talking to. And this is something that I think when you talk about storytelling and you talk about the idea of kind of connecting with a specific audience, one of the biggest issues that I see in marketing is that people try to talk to everyone. You need to be very specific in understanding who it is you're trying to connect with. Who is the audience that needs to resonate with this story? Similar to music, not everybody has the same taste. So when it comes to your product, when it comes to what you're offering, not everybody is going to like it. And that's okay. It's perfectly fine for not everyone to embrace your story. It's perfectly fine for not everyone to like your story. That's okay. If you're just targeting baby boomers, that's all right. If you're just targeting young families, that's all right. But what I encourage you to do is take ownership of that. Take ownership of the story and own it. I have a friend, and I was talking to him last night, and he's running a marketing company, but he's not trying to target retailers. He's not trying to target restaurants, hotels, startups, technology companies. He took a very niche audience, and everything that he does is focused around the yoga community. So he's trying to create content about yoga. He's talking about what yogis can do on Instagram, what yogis can do on Twitter, what yogis can do for their web presence. He's very targeted in who he's talking to. And I think when you think about your brand and you think of what you're offering, you too have a very similar perspective, or at least you need to. You need to think about who are the people who walk through your doors on a regular basis? What are their interests? What are their wants? What are their needs? What are their desires? What are the stories that they tell themselves? And how can you inject those stories into the story that you tell as it relates to your brand? When you're thinking about buying a home, it's very similar, right? Like not everybody loves these ideas of these tiny homes. If you're familiar with the tiny homes, there's this trend that's been going across the nation where people are buying homes the size of rooms, really. And they're placing their bathroom in there, they're placing their living room, they're placing their bedroom, and they're living in these very small homes. They're not for everybody, and that's okay. A certain type of person wants a tiny home. I would never be able to do it, but some people would, and that's okay. That's their audience. That's who the people who are making these tiny homes need to connect with and need to target. Then there's the bigger homes, the mansions, the RVs. Everything that you may want in your home is going to be different from the next person. Some people might want a jacuzzi. Some people might want a big kitchen. Some people might want a den. Some people might want an office. Some people might want a bookshelf. At the end of the day, you need to recognize that if you are trying to talk to everybody, you will be talking to no one. No one will resonate with your message. No one will connect with your story. When you think about some of the most impactful brands over the past few decades, the brands that stand out aren't the brands that spoke to everyone. They're the brands that really focused in on a specific audience. So when you think about Red Bull, for example, they're not talking to my grandmother. They're talking to me 5 years ago when I'm out trying new things, going rock climbing. I always needed to kind of have wings because I was going 100 miles a minute. That's who they were talking to. So understand your brand, understand your audience. And then when you look at your online presence, it's important that you understand what stories you can tell in that sense on your website, in the tweets that you send, on the Facebook content that you're creating. And what we're going to do now is we're going to go through a few examples of how you can really start to tell your story more effectively, but also how you can find your story. There's three things that we're going to kind of talk about today. We're going to talk about laying the foundation as it relates to your web presence, your social presence, and your TripAdvisor page. So when we go through the web presence piece, we're going to talk about the story that your website is telling. We're going to talk about when somebody Googles you, what shows up and what story is communicated to them. When somebody goes to your Facebook your Facebook page or your Twitter account, and they start to have a conversation or a dialogue with you, what's that experience like? And when they go to your TripAdvisor page, what kind of stories are being told to them that is reflecting into their overarching buying experience? So I think that the key is to really understand that between your web presence and your social presence, this is where a lot of the first impressions start to take place. So if you're thinking about the entire buying process as it relates to travel and tourism, it all starts with a little bit of inspiration. And the inspiration could happen from anywhere. The inspiration could happen from watching The Bachelor and seeing that somebody went on a great trip to Bali and then saying, oh, I want to go to Bali, or they had somebody had a TV ad and you've seen it and that was like, oh, Nova Scotia looks cool, maybe I'll go there. That experience then translates to the web, because you're going to go to Google and you're going to start to search. And what happens is the decisions that people start to make is based off of what they find online, what they're seeing on Pinterest, what they're seeing on Twitter, what reviews they're seeing on YouTube, what they're seeing on TripAdvisor, and most importantly, what the first few results are on Google. And what we're going to talk about today is how you can ensure that the foundation that you build over the next few weeks is going to arm you with a quality web presence and a quality social presence. So to begin, let's chat about the web presence. This is when somebody goes to Google, they type in your name, or they type in a question surrounding something that you could provide an answer to. So when you think about your web presence, you need to think about it in two ways. You need to think about it as the stories that you tell and the stories that others tell about you. So let me remind you what that means. The stories that you tell are the stories that you have complete control over. It's the message that you have on your website. It's the bio that you have on Twitter. It's the stories that you're telling on a regular basis. When you start to do that, when you start to tell that story, you're able to really communicate your message in a meaningful and effective way. I just got a message from Tiffany that's saying that the presentation is in full screen. So I'm going to try to fix that for you guys. Perfect. Great. So where were we? We were talking about the stories we tell. All right. So there's two types of stories you tell. There's the stories that you tell on your website. There's the stories that you tell on social media. And then there's the stories that other people share about you. And these come from two different places. It comes from customers, it comes from media, and it comes from just those conversations that are organically taking place. And when these conversations are happening, you have to recognize that as a brand, you have no opportunity to control those stories. The only stories that you can control are the conversations and the messages that you're pushing out through your own social media channels. The story that you're telling when people visit your website. The stories that your customers share on TripAdvisor, the reviews they may leave on Facebook, all of these messages are not in your control, but you can influence them. You can influence the conversation. And that's where the magic happens. You have the influence to turn their dialogue into a positive if it's negative. And we're going to talk about that a little bit this week, but also in more detail next week as it relates to how you can influence this conversation. But when it comes to the story that you tell, when it comes to the story and the message that you're communicating for your brand, it's really important to really resonate with your audience, to create a story that kind of pulls on their heartstrings or connects with them internally. So it's a story that's aligned with their needs and aligns with what they actually wanted when they found you in the first place. So there's a few things you need to understand as it relates to the tourism experience from a buying perspective. 65% of travelers use the internet to begin their research before deciding where they want to go. So the first thing that they do is they go to the internet and they're typing in what is there to do in Nova Scotia? What is there to do in Truro? What is there to do in Annapolis Valley? They're asking those questions to get answers that will help them make a decision of whether or not this is something they want to do. They're going to Pinterest and they're doing research. They're going to Twitter and they're asking their friends. They're uploading Facebook questions, asking people, hey, have you gone here? What would you do if you went? This is the new landscape as it relates to the travel buying behavior, the buying experience. So what you need to do is understand that this conversation is happening whether you like it or not. And what you need to do is ensure that the conversations that are happening and the messages being shared align with the story that you want to tell. What's influencing the majority of travel decisions? Primarily, it's still your family and friends, but it's quickly becoming tied with the internet also. It was about 55.3% as it relates to the internet. This is a source directly from Google, where they did a huge study measuring the sources of inspiration as it related to leisure and business travel. And family and friends and colleagues offline were just a little bit more than the actual internet. So when you think about this, it's showing you that this is where people are going when they're trying to make their decisions. So you think about your own experiences and you think about your own behaviors and what you're doing when you're trying to plan a trip. We all go to Google. It tends to be one of the first sites we go to. And we start to research the places that we're going to stay. We start to research the locations in which we want to visit and see. We try to find out whether or not this landmark is actually worth checking out. So we go to Google to actually find the answers to these questions, and we use it as a channel that helps us make more intelligent decisions. So what we need to do as operators and as brands and as marketers is understand that this shift in how we're finding information is one of the biggest shifts in the way that consumers have behaved in years. So what we need to do is we need to ensure that when they're going to Google, when they're going to Facebook to find us, that the messages and the stories that we're telling truly resonate with them in a meaningful way. When it comes to business and leisure travelers, the majority still states that they go to search first thing. Search is the number one driver when it comes to the beginning of their experience. So what I would recommend is that you really ensure that when you go to start up your web presence, that you're ensuring that it's optimized for search. You want to ensure that you have the right title tags. You want to ensure that the web presence that you have is actually ranking. And I'm going to share with you a couple tips and tricks that will ensure that you do show up when people are looking for you on Google. So when you think about it, Google is definitely the most important piece of the tourism buying cycle. Google has recently started to kind of change the way that they deliver information to users. You can see here, if I typed in YZ to YYZ, it would automatically embed directly for me into Google the opportunity to start booking my flight. So I can actually select the date. I can see comparisons between different airlines. The entire buying cycle as it relates to tourism is being changed because of Google. Currently within Google, you're also able to book hotels directly into their platform. So travelers are starting to use Google for a place where they find destinations, where they find flights, where they find accommodations, things to do, places to eat, everything in between. Everyone is going to Google when they're starting to plan a trip. And they do it because they know that Google is the best place to find those results as it relates to what they should be doing. So what you need to do is ensure that the story that you're telling there is relevant, engaging, and worth reading. So let's say, for example, you type in things to do in Halifax. This is an example of what would typically show up. So what you're seeing here right off the top is Google's integration, right? Like they're making immediate recommendations on the different things that you can do in Halifax. What you're going to want to do if you run a museum or if you run a gallery or a museum of some sort, you want to ensure that you're taking ownership of your Google page and tagging it with museums, tagging it with history, tagging it with culture. So it's more likely to actually show up here because that's what Google is using when it starts to find that content. The number two thing is TripAdvisor. So you see TripAdvisor showing up here and you have to say to yourself, okay, what can I do to start showing up on TripAdvisor? Well, the first thing you need to do is you need to ensure that you have a natural presence there. And then once you do, you want to encourage people to give you reviews. You want to encourage people to review you on TripAdvisor because that's going to only influence and increase your likelihood of being in that top 10. So there's a lot of different things that you can do, but you need to understand that this is where the majority of your experiences, the decisions around experiences when you go somewhere are happening. They're happening right here on Google during that first page when people are clicking and finding inspiration around what they should do when they go to Nova Scotia, what they should do when they go to your city, your town, and they're making decisions based off of the results that they're seeing. One of the things that you need to also consider is Googling yourself often. Like you need to Google yourself often. I'm sure a lot of you have done it. I Google myself on a regular basis. I'm not afraid to say that. And you should do the same. You should be searching yourself to find out what people are saying. Because I told you, when it comes to your web presence, there's two things that matter. What people are saying about you and what you're saying about yourself. And you do this search just like I've done here with Bonehead's Barbecue. And the first thing that shows up is the story that they're telling. It's their website. But right below that is their TripAdvisor, followed by Facebook, followed by Yelp. So 3 channels that are built off of the backs of user-generated content being created by others, are the next 3 most important links on Google when I do a search for them. What you need to do is ensure that when you search for yourself, the experience itself is high value. That the experience when people do this search is going to be met with positive reviews like you're seeing here. That you have photos uploaded, that you have all of your information, such as your phone number, the hours in which you're open. And for you to actually do this, it's very straightforward. You simply go into Google, you set up an account, and then you can create a business page. And if you are already here and you don't know how you got there, there's this button that says Suggest and Edit. If you click that, you'll be able to go in and you'll be able to make great changes and adjustments for yourself. So you might think, okay, so is your website the most important part of your presence? Not always. Like, you have to consider the fact that below here is a lot of content that's going to influence that buyer's behavior and that buyer's decision. So what you need to do is understand, okay, how can we ensure that our TripAdvisor reviews are high? How can we ensure that our Facebook presence is high quality to make sure that we show up? Those are the questions you need to ask, and those are the questions that you need to ensure that you've optimized for. One of the other things that you need to consider is a lot of people don't search you by your name, because most of them won't actually know who you are. If I'm coming to Halifax and I live in, I don't know, the United Kingdom, I don't know who Bonehead's Barbecue is. I don't know who Heartwood is or Envy is. But if I'm a vegan, I'm going to search best vegan restaurants in Halifax. So when I go to Google and I type that in, what's going to show up isn't necessarily going to be your website. It's going to be your Google places. So what Google does is it tracks what restaurants have gone in and built their actual accounts and have tagged it as certain keywords. And if you've tagged vegan, you're going to show up when somebody types in best vegan restaurants in Halifax. What it then does is it ranks the best restaurants, not solely based on who has the most reviews or the best reviews, but it also ranks based off of the quantity of reviews. So you can see here, Heartwood has 17 reviews, Envy has 11, but Envy also has 4.4 stars versus Heartwood's 4.3. What's going on is Google is encouraging you to get more reviews. They're telling you, if you get more reviews, if you're receiving more reviews, we're going to put you at a higher level than the company that doesn't have as many reviews. So you want to encourage them. You want to tell people to review you on Google. You want to tell people to review you on TripAdvisor. You want to encourage them to do that for you. And the way that you do it, again, like I said, you go to Google Places. If you go to Google and you type in Places, you'll be able to set this up. You can sign in, you can set up your account for free, you can add in your phone number, you can add in a whole bunch of different details surrounding your company, and you can actually place it on the map. And that's what you just seen in this screenshot. All of these companies have gone in and they've placed themselves on Google Places map. People are reviewing them, they added their details surrounding when they're open. You can even upload a few images. Once you've done that, you increase the likelihood of having your content showing up in Google in the right way. And for people who aren't necessarily aware of your brand name, but are understanding what the story is that they want to connect with. So what you also want to do when you reach out to Google and you sign up that account, you can actually get these stickers that say review us on Google, place them in your window. And if you don't, if you can't figure out how to get the stickers, because I know they gave them out for a short period of time, feel free to make your own. Like, you can go into Google Images, type in review us on Google, and they'll deliver a handful of stickers that you can kind of print off and start distributing within your area on your own. So definitely do this. So when you think about your website and you think about the message that you convey when people get there, this is one of the most important things that you need to consider. You need to understand what people actually want, like what they really want. And it's not always what your marketing agency or what a consultant will tell you they want. What people want at the end of the day isn't the fancy pictures. They don't want a bunch of flash. They don't want a crazy animation that shows a dog running across the lawn. What they want is a website that makes it easy for them to find what they want. And if you're a restaurant, that's probably your menu, your hours. If you're a hotel, that's probably your pricing. They want the most information. And they want the information that's going to make their buying experience complete. So when you're thinking about your website and the structure of it, go into Google Analytics and find out what are people clicking on when they come to your site. And then make that one of the most important elements or the most important call to actions when people get there. And you want to speak to your users in their voice. I think a lot of people make the mistake of saying, yeah, but what if somebody comes to my website and they're not a mom? Or what if somebody comes to my website and they're not an adventurer? I'm going to lose them. Well, you need to speak directly to someone. Like I said early on, if you don't speak to your audience directly, then you're likely going to speak to no one at all. So if you're talking to moms, maybe you can use inspiration from a meme like this, where it says sometimes a mom just needs a 5-minute break, and it shows the kid on the clothesline. But you can take inspiration from that by saying a restaurant that allows you to escape all of the hustle and bustle of motherhood, something like that. Or maybe a 5-day vacation fit for a mom, whatever that may be. If you can speak directly to your audience, they're more likely to buy from you. If you can speak directly to a foodie, you're more likely to get them to buy from you. So understand your audience, understand what motivates them, and use their own language on your website if you can. Like, find out what they're saying about you and then remix that to tell your story, because your website really does tell a story. When you come to a site like this for the first time, you look at it, you're immediately thinking, okay, that's a great looking shot. It's not a fancy website. It's not really over the top. It's probably good food and a good price. But then you come to a barbecue website like this, where it's selling the exact same product, and you have to think, okay, sure, the food looks amazing, but this place is probably a little bit pricey. So you need to understand the message and the story that you're trying to tell. This one is talking about the quality ingredients and that they do it the old way with wood and with time. So you know that this is resonating with a certain type of person. It's going to resonate with somebody who's truly passionate about barbecue. It might not resonate with somebody who's just looking for a slab of ribs and they don't care if they have Frank's hot sauce or Mighty Quinn's hot sauce. They might not care. They might not be looking for this type of experience. But that story that you tell when somebody comes to your website is so important, and you need to ensure that it's a story that really resonates with people on an emotional and on a level that truly connects with them personally. You can look at these two examples. These are two hotels, and they tell a very different story, right? Like, the one on the left is a bed and breakfast. You can see that it's saying historic holidays at a classic coastal getaway. That's something that kind of tells you, okay, this is going to be a chance to escape. Then on the right, you have Virgin Hotels, where it says fancy getting into bed with a virgin. You look at that and you immediately think, okay, this is more like a chain. It's more of a something that is more generic. Maybe it's a copy and paste kind of thing. The same experience that you would get anywhere, but of course it seems like it might have a little bit of a Virgin brand edge to it. Two very different websites, two very different audiences. The person who wants that historic holiday on a coastal coastal getaway isn't the same person who wants that generic Virgin Hotels experience. So you need to understand your audience, understand what they're looking for, and communicate their story in a meaningful way. This is one of my favorite tips, and it's something that I've used a lot, and I think that a lot of operators miss out on this opportunity. Use language that your audience is likely to use when they're describing you, because if you are reiterating to them what they already think, or what they know, or what they feel about you, or what customers feel about you, they'll connect with that story. So this is a quick copywriting kind of hack for your own website when you're thinking about your web presence. Go to your reviews, see what people are saying. Take the best review. So for this example here, it says never had a better burger or best burger in a very long time. So on your website, why not use the line, you'll never have a better burger? You can use that type of language. You can use the language that your customers are using, and it will resonate with them. This is another example. So it's a local hotel, and in two of the reviews say charming, and one says old, well-maintained hotel. So it's also a match on TripAdvisor from romantic. So why not combine these things that you know people are talking about or saying as it relates to your place and use it in your copy? So maybe you call it a charming hotel for a romantic escape, something like that. Again, use the language that you know people are going to resonate with, and use the stories that they're already telling about you to really amplify your story and tell the story in a more effective way. Here's another example. This is a company called Hampton Creek. I'm not sure if a lot of you are familiar with it. It's a mayonnaise company, so it's not exactly in the tourism space, but it does a great job as it relates to kind of telling their story in a meaningful way. They call themselves Food with a Conscience. So for years we've been eating mayonnaise, and the mayo that we've all grown up with had a lot of chemicals in it. It had eggs in it. It had a variety of different things that weren't necessarily the greatest for you. We survived, we lived, of course, don't get me wrong. But there were things in it that were also bad for the environment. So these guys took a different approach where they said, grow up with something better. So they know that this entire generation that has grown up on the traditional mayonnaise are now buying mayo for their kids. So they're saying, let your kids grow up with something better. Buy our mayo, which is easier on the environment, that is easier on animals, and that is really has a conscience. When you come to their website, they have letters written to you, and it says you aren't the problem. We've created a world where making good food choices that violates what's best for ourselves and our families is seductively easy. When my dad walks into a grocery aisle this Sunday and buys pancakes or potatoes and chocolate chips, the ingredients that make them so addictive are often bizarrely unhealthy. He has no choice. He doesn't care because they're cheap and because they're delicious, no matter how often I send him the nutritional facts. So what they're able to do is they're able to resonate with you on an emotional level, because no one wants their dad to be eating a bunch of junk. No one wants their children to eat a bunch of junk. But what they're saying is they don't have to. With our products, they can eat more consciously. They can eat healthier products, and they won't suffer down the road. You can also use your website to give yourself a little bit of credibility. It's a little bit ironic that we go from a mayo company to good old McDonald's here. But they've been doing this for years, where they give themselves credibility in front of all of their stores. They served over 99 billion people. If you can serve over 99 billion people, there has to be nothing wrong with McDonald's. McDonald's must be good for you if 99 billion people have been served. That's the social proof that they're demonstrating. When you see that certificate of excellence on TripAdvisor, that's a piece of credibility. So use that to your advantage. Or if you haven't received that award, show some of your reviews. Show what people are saying about you on Twitter. Take a tweet that somebody said about you, and they said, I had a great experience with your company, and embed that directly on your website. Or even just make the claim, we'd love to hear your review on TripAdvisor. Because by saying to people, I want you to review us, demonstrates that you're that confident in the service and the product that you're offering people. And when it comes to social media, take content like this, where this person was actually at the hotel in Ubud. They took a photo. It's a beautiful shot, and it says, I wouldn't mind waking up with this view every single morning. So why not take that content and then republish it on your own site so people can see that people who have actually experienced your product, experienced your service, really enjoyed it. And if you can do that, if you can show that real people are saying positive things about your brand, the credibility just goes through the roof, and it will actually allow you to stand out and increase your likelihood of actually converting. So that's your web presence. Some of the key things that you need to consider when it comes to your web presence, like I said, is ensuring that your website itself is optimized for Google. You want to ensure that the experience as a whole is consistent when it comes to your Google Places. You have your phone number listings, you have images. Please tell people to review you. Be sure to send that message out as much as you can through a variety of different channels. You also want to ensure that the story that you tell on your website is compelling, engaging, and connects with people on an emotional level. Now we're going to talk about the social presence. So the social presence is channels like Facebook, Twitter, and all of these networks that people are using to interact on a daily basis. The shift cannot be understated. Like the shift that we're going through across the globe cannot be understated. We've reached nearly half of the world's population actually being online, active users. And this doesn't include people who have access to the internet once in a while. This is people who are active. 3.175 billion people are active users of the internet. So when people say, oh, my audience doesn't use the internet, yes, they do. Your audience is on the internet. No one's audience is not using the internet in some way or some form anymore. That's just it's not possible. Your audience is using the internet to connect, to communicate. And sure, maybe they're not looking for your brand and looking for your message right now, but that's because your presence isn't where it needs to be. You can tell a story that's so captivating, so unique, that they will find you and then they'll tell your story for you. And that's the power of online. It allows you to tell a story that resonates with people, to build what I would call like a tribe where people come together and they interact on a regular basis about something that they're passionate about, and then they spread that story for you. And that's what you really want. So a few stats that just demonstrate the landscape in the world in which we live in today. I'm sure a lot of you can relate to this stat, but 79% of us have our phones on us or near us all but 2 hours of a waking day. Like, when was the last time you didn't have your phone near you? I'm sure some of you have your phone right now. You might even be holding your phone. And it's funny because that's just the shift that we've had. Just the other day on Valentine's Day, we went out for dinner, and at every table, all of these young people had their phones in front of them while they were on dates, and instead of talking to each other, they had their heads into their phones. And the reason why is because our mobile devices have connected us with people all over the world. They connect us with brands, they connect with people all over. And people are addicted to these devices, but that's just a shift. It's a shift in how we interact, and it's also a distraction. You walk through the hall, or you're waiting in line at a grocery store. Instead of talking to the person in front of you, you want to pull out your phone and talk to people who you actually know, that you care about. And it is a shift, and a lot of people get freaked out by it, and they say, oh, this world is so antisocial. Everybody's just glued to their devices. But in reality, this isn't a huge shift from how things used to be. The only difference is the devices aren't as big as newspapers anymore. If you were to go back into the 1920s, this was a common occurrence. You'd go onto the bus and you would see a bunch of people with their heads in their newspapers, into magazines. The only difference is that now, instead of reading a paper, people are actually able to read news that's tailored to them. They're able to do research about the trip that they are going on. They can send a text message to their friend. They can connect with their partner. It's changed the way that we actually interact. So it's not necessarily a bad thing, but it is an opportunity. It's an opportunity for you as a brand or as a marketer to say, okay, if people are spending so much time with these devices, how can we get our message in front of them? And one of the primary ways that people are doing it is with Facebook. 92% of marketers are spending money advertising on Facebook itself. So when you look at a number like that, and this is from a report from Social Bakers, they did a survey of marketers, professional marketers, and 92% of them said that they were spending money advertising on Facebook. That's a significant amount. And what it should demonstrate to you is that there's obviously money to be made by investing your time here. There's obviously an opportunity that they've been able to capitalize on that I'm confident that you can capitalize on as well. The first thing I recommend anyone, and it goes back to the Google idea, promote at your location that you're on Facebook. That's where you're going to get the majority of your traffic. The majority of the people you interact with is going to happen face to face. So when they're having that experience, when they're interacting with you, tell them to follow you on Twitter. Tell them to like you on Facebook. You want that engagement to go from offline to online. So I want to go into some of the foundational questions around Facebook and how it works. And some of you will know this like the back of your hand. But what I want to talk about is the difference between a Facebook profile, a Facebook page, and a Facebook group. So everybody who is on Facebook should have a Facebook profile. And the Facebook profile is something like this. This is my Facebook profile. It's where my friends can connect with me, where you can add me as a friend, where we can have conversations. You can send me direct messages. I upload photos of my coffee. I upload photos of my weekend. It's where you as an individual lives online. It's your personal experience. It's the experience that you have as a human being versus as a brand. Once you have a profile, you have the ability to then create a Facebook group or a Facebook page. This is an example of a group. So what a group is you join a group. So it's similar to, let's say, a book club that you may be a member of. You would add all of the profiles, so what you just seen, to this group, and then you can have conversations in private. So only the people within your group are going to see the conversations. They're going to interact with the conversations. This is a closed group that I've developed. It's all about Instagram marketing. So you can join this group and you can have conversations about Instagram marketing. So you can do the same thing for your business if you wanted to create kind of a group of other like-minded businesses. So say you're in Halifax and you wanted to create a private group where there's a handful of businesses that want to promote each other's content. You add all of the different owners of these accounts into this group. And then whenever somebody has a new blog post written or somebody has a promotion going on, you post it in the group. The entire group would get notified, and then everybody can share it. So groups offer an opportunity for collaboration, for engagement, and everybody gets notified whenever you make a post. So that's one of the most powerful pieces of groups. But what I recommend for your business, when I talk about your actual company, I recommend that you create a page. And this is an example of a Facebook page with TIANS here. They have a Facebook page and you can like it. So as an individual, you have to press the like button to subscribe to the content that TIANS would share. The key difference here can be described in 3 very simple ways. To connect with a profile, you have to add them as a friend, or you can follow them. When it comes to a group, you have to join it or request to join the group. And when it comes to a Facebook page, you have to like it. And that's really the difference. So if your Facebook page has to have me added as a friend, then you have a problem and you want to switch it over to a Facebook page. And if you go to Google and you type in change my profile to a page, it's a very simple process. You press a button and it will allow you to make that change. But you want to ensure that your business itself has a page and not a profile. So what goes into a great Facebook page? Here's an example of a great Facebook page, and it's really broken out into 4 key things. You want to have a memorable avatar, so an image that is your display picture that people can recognize, because this is going to show up in their newsfeed whenever you put up a post. So you want to ensure that it's something straightforward, to the point, and tells your story. You also want to have a compelling cover photo. So what you're seeing back here is just a straight up image of 3 different types of barbecue sauce. But that's what they sell, so you connect with it. If you're into barbecue, you look at that image and you're like, okay, that's kind of cool. You want to use an image up there that does something similar, that kind of captivates people, that connects them with your brand and tells your story in a more meaningful way. You also want to add additional information, which I'll show you shortly, but that's things like your phone number, things like your website, your Instagram feed, a link to your menu, things of that nature. And you also want to verify your actual Facebook page, so nobody actually goes out and creates your page for you and then tries to kind of rip you off and steal your branding. But my key message here is to ensure that your profile picture is something memorable. A lot of people will take a picture of their bed and breakfast or a picture of their hotel and upload that. If you have 2 locations, that's not a great idea, because you're not going to be able to show both of them in that image. So you want to use like a logo. You want to use something iconic about your experience. Don't use a picture of the view. You could use a picture of your hotel if it's a wide angle lens and a great photo, but you want to ensure that this is something that really connects with people and captivates them, and that is consistent. If you have a personal brand, you want to use the same image here as you use on Twitter, and the same can be said with your business brand. Use the same profile picture that you have on Twitter, on Facebook, on Google+, on every channel that you can, to ensure that there's some consistency. So when it comes to that additional information I was talking about, this is where you have the ability to kind of upload that content. You want to upload information surrounding the prices, so let people know what type of prices they'll have to pay. Let them know the times of operation, let them know your phone number, your website URL, and you can even install a few different apps on Facebook, such as your Instagram feed, that will allow people to click with the press of a button over and then see your Instagram account as well. So one question that a lot of people have when it comes to Facebook is, where do all of these reviews come from? Well, they come from people. So similar to TripAdvisor, people can go onto your Facebook page, type in your name, and they can actually leave you reviews. And these reviews show up directly on your account. So it's important that you're watching them, that you're monitoring them, and you don't actually have to be on Facebook to get reviews. So if you are not on Facebook, but you have a business that is in the tourism space, that's in the food space, hotel space, do a quick search and check and see what type of reviews you have. You can see here, both of these are unofficial pages, but they have multiple reviews. So if those reviews are negative, those reviews aren't positive, you want to jump in there, because these are the conversations about your brand that are influencing people's perspective and perception of you, that you want to actually jump in and influence. So one of the things I want to share is how to get verified on Facebook. And this is relatively new, but it's a great opportunity because it increases the likelihood of your Facebook page showing up on Google, but it also gives you a little bit of credibility. So what you're going to want to do is you go to your Facebook page and then you're going to click settings. Once you click settings, you're going to be taken to a page where it shows you a variety of different items that you can click. You're going to select general on the left-hand side. From there, you're going to see right under page visibility, page verification. your page is likely not verified. And if it isn't, you're going to want to click edit. From there, you're going to have this quick and easy form that's going to show up, and you're going to be asked to enter your publicly listed phone number. You type in your phone number, select your country, select your call language, and then within seconds, Facebook's actually going to call you, and they're going to tell you a certain code. Once they tell you that code, you're going to type in that code itself, and then you're going to be a verified Facebook page. And that's the key. Once you become verified on Facebook, you have a level of credibility. It allows you to ensure that there's not random pages floating around like we just saw on that last slide, where there were reviews on multiple different pages. You'll truly take control of your brand. So I strongly recommend that you verify your page. So then there's Twitter. So when it comes to Twitter, it's a channel similar to Facebook as it relates to kind of being a social network. There's two things you can do on Twitter as it relates to kind of subscribing to content, or at least there's two main features within Twitter. You can have followers and you can follow other people. So your followers are people who are subscribing to your content. So for this company, Humanity Cafe, they have 6,545 people who have subscribed to their content. So if they send out a tweet and one of those people happen to be online on Twitter, that content is then going to be shared on those people's feed. And I'll show you what a feed looks like very shortly. They also have 4,000 or so people whose accounts they've subscribed to. So what that means is if their followers send out a tweet, that content is going to show up in their feed because they're following them back. So what I would recommend is that you do follow people back. So if you have customers and they're tweeting about you, follow them back. It shows that you're open to engagement, that you're interested in your customers. And you're also going to want to ensure that you have a link uploaded to your account. So a lot of people make the mistake on Twitter to set up their account, but they don't actually add a URL. Make sure that that's there. Also make sure that you have a description that highlights exactly what you do. And if you want to take a page out of their book and tell people link below, drive people to your shop or an online experience that you want them to take in. Call to actions are a great way to do that. One thing that's on Twitter that a lot of people aren't aware of is this idea of pinning a tweet. So if you go to Twitter and you send out a tweet, which is 140 characters or less, you can also include images or a link in your tweet. Once that piece of content is distributed and out there with the world, it's all distributed chronologically. So if you're sending out a tweet at 8 a.m., that tweet goes out at 8 a.m. and then at 8:30, it might be at the bottom of my Twitter feed because of all of the people I follow. So I might actually miss it. What you're able to do on Twitter is you can pin a tweet that is very important to you. By pinning this tweet, if somebody comes to your profile, if they come to your account, they'll see that first and they'll be more likely to click it. So if you have an announcement to make, if you just move locations, if you're rolling out a new special, you're going to want to pin a tweet that kind of reiterates that major point that you have and drive people to that content on a regular basis. So this is an example of my feed. So these are people who have sent out tweets over the course of the day. This is a tweet that was sent out from Jill. It says, "Is it lunchtime yet?" Mike comes in and he's actually replying back. So when you see this little blue line, that means there's a reply. To reply, you simply press this arrow button and then it will allow you to engage with this person. Mike says, "Lunchtime is a state of mind. It's always lunchtime if you believe." So for a company who's selling food, that's a great opportunity as it relates to a conversation where you could jump in. You could jump in and say, "Yes, especially if you come to my restaurant," or "Yes, especially if you live close to my cafe." So jumping into these conversations gives you an opportunity to kind of establish a set of dialogue and influence the conversation and influence the story. What you're also able to do on Twitter, which is interesting, is favorite people's tweets. So you see that heart, that just means favorite or like. If you press that button, it will give them a notification that you like their tweet. What's also interesting and that a lot of people overlook is the fact that if you have an @ symbol at the beginning of your tweet, meaning that you're mentioning someone, and there is no character such as a period or a letter ahead of that, that tweet is only going to be seen by people who follow both Mike and Jill. This is Twitter's way of cleaning up the feed to ensure that the content that shows up is only relevant to you. So if Mike sent this tweet to Jill and I didn't follow both of them, I would never see Mike's tweet. I would have seen Jill's tweet if I followed her, but if I only followed Mike, I would never see this tweet at all. So that's one of the opportunities that a lot of people overlook. They send out a tweet and it starts with the @ symbol. but the only people who would see that content are people who are following both of you. So when it comes to Twitter, you definitely want to engage. If you're sending out a tweet such as this one where you're telling people to check out something that you're offering and they write back to you, they take time out of their day to respond, please respond. Take the time. It doesn't take a lot of work to kind of just say very like they did here. Take the time and effort to engage back. Similar to this one here, they're using Twitter and they're promoting a Tchaikovsky. This person says, sounds delicious, adding this to my must-try list. So that's a win, right? Like they've been able to convert someone into saying, okay, that's on my must-try list. I want to give it a go by simply sending out a tweet. So there's two different types of retweets now. And a retweet is essentially when you take some content that was shared by one person and then put it out on your own feed. So let's say I send out a tweet and I have 500 followers. Somebody retweets me and they have 1,500 followers. That tweet now has the potential to reach 2,000 people. So what you're seeing here is what happens if you press retweet directly in Twitter. It will put this up and it will say, do you want to retweet this to your followers? And if I press the retweet button without adding text, it will simply share that tweet with my followers. But if I add text to it, it will show up differently and it will actually add a comment above that retweet. So which is the best approach? It really depends on what you're trying to accomplish. If you want to just share content, just press the retweet button. If you want to share content and add a little bit of context to it, so why you're retweeting it, feel free to add a comment and then say why you're doing so. This is what I would call a Inception tweet, which is a retweet of a retweet inside of a retweet. So Mexie's Halifax sent out this tweet where it's saying our lunch feature for Heritage Day Nova Scotia is this penne pasta. The Second Fork retweets them and they say, stop by Mexie's for some dinner tonight and let Halifax know how it was. Then on top of that, Mexie's then retweets that retweet. So what you're seeing here is one tweet that was sent, just a generic one, a retweet with a quote from the Second Fork, and then a retweet from Mexie's of that retweet. It's a tongue twister, but this is something that you can do as well. So why would Mexie's do this? They would do it because they want to reiterate to their followers who may not have followed them when they sent this first tweet that they are actually offering this $12 special. So retweets are a great way to also put secondary information in front of your followers and your users. So what type of content should you share? There's a few different things. The most important thing when it comes to your social presence is the content that you're distributing. It's the content that you're pushing out there from a brand perspective and the content that you're distributing through your networks. You want to share contents that show products or services. So if you have a coffee shop, you want to show pictures of your coffee. If you have customers who are talking about you, you want to share reposts from your fans, your customers, your users. This is an example where somebody took a photo of their view and they were reposted on Facebook. All you have to do to show credit is simply ask the person if they would mind, and then give them credit like they have here by saying this is their Instagram handle. You can retweet positive things that people are saying about your company, similar to what this tweet is doing here. You can tell stories that will resonate with your audience. So this goes back to the idea of storytelling. So this is a link where it talks about somebody who sold all of their possessions and they started to travel the world. Sharing this story resonates with the Four Seasons Bali's audience because they know that their audience are people who are who love to travel, who get excited about this idea of just traveling and being an explorer. So you want to take that insight and share content that's relevant to your audience. And you can do this easily, right? Like you go to Huffington Post, and if you're a coffee shop, you're going to find an article that's all about coffee. And then you would share that on your account. Or you would find an article all about the benefits of coffee in the morning, and you share that on your Twitter account or on your Facebook. You want to share articles that offer value to the lives of your followers and subscribers. You also want to share funny content. If you can make someone laugh, you can get them to do anything. So this is an example from a yoga studio where they say yogas be like, and it's showing how bad they need to get to yoga. So again, you can have fun with it. Like go to Pinterest, type in your brand, type in something related to your story, find content like this, and don't be afraid to reshare it on your own account. Also show people behind the scenes. So this is an example where they put a Santa hat on this guy and it says happy holidays from all of us. And it shows an image of their team. People want to know who's behind the brand. They want to know your story. They want to know your face. So don't be afraid to give them that look. What people also like are top of mind stories. So everybody in Halifax, if you're in Nova Scotia, you're very familiar with this idea of storm tips. You can capitalize on these top of mind stories, things that people are talking about, by doing funny promotions like this and then sharing images. So these guys offered a storm stay rate, which is $89, and you also get a bag of storm chips. So they're having some fun with it. They share that content, and they're able to kind of connect with their audience because of it. Another example would be when Nova Scotia made the Donair the provincial food. You're going to want to put up a post that might say, put up a blog post that says 5 great reasons why you should have a Donair this weekend, whatever that may be. Create content that really resonates and capitalizes on those top of mind stories, and you'll be able to stand out. So one of the worst things that can happen on social media is that people unfollow you. They unlike your page, they stop following your Facebook, they stop caring what you have to say. And these are the reasons why that happens. The company posts too often. They're selling all the time. The content is boring or irrelevant. They only liked you because of an offer, or there's not enough deals. So what I want you to consider here is number 2, too much marketing, sell. If you take the insights that we've talked about today as it relates to kind of sharing stories about your service, having fun, sharing content that makes people laugh, you won't get unfollowed because of this reason. You'll also be more likely to not be boring or irrelevant. You'll be sharing content that is truly resonating with them. So you want to embrace that idea of telling stories that connect with people, and not stories that are simply on one side of the coin where you're trying to constantly sell them. I also recommend that you use Hootsuite. It's a great channel for scheduling your content. If you are looking to upload photos, you can schedule them to go on this channel. You can also do the same on channels like Instagram, so you can actually schedule your content to go later. You can schedule your tweets, all of that good stuff. I actually have a tweet scheduled for the year 2083. It just says, hey, I miss everyone. So everybody's going to be freaked out because in 2083, I probably won't be here. So it's going to be a little bit funny. Well, not really funny because I won't be here, but you get what I mean. There's another app called canva.com. And what canva.com does is it allows you to kind of make those visuals. Visuals get more engagement on social media than anything else. So I recommend you check this site out. It makes it easy for you to upload photos and customize them and make them look very professional. There's also a lot of great opportunities as it relates to visuals that are happening through TIANS and through tourism, Nova Scotia Tourism. So what I would recommend is that you get in touch with Tiffany and Lisa as it relates to learn more about those programs. They're offering an opportunity where you can have an investment into compelling content, and I strongly recommend you check that out if you're in the tourism space. So the final thing I want to talk about is just cleaning up your TripAdvisor. It's one of the most trusted resources for trip planning, but it's something that a lot of people underestimate. It's one of the number one channels that people use when they're booking their travel and planning their vacations. So you need to make an investment here. And like I said before, you don't have to invest money, but you do have to invest time. You have to invest time in ensuring that you're responding to reviews, that you're taking the time to show that you care, and really interacting with people on these channels. Only 4% of hotels on TripAdvisor actually respond to reviews, and that's a huge loss. It doesn't take much time to respond back to someone. So I recommend that you take the time to watch your reviews, but also engage with them. And that's how you can get better reviews at the end of the day. First recommendation I have is that you encourage them. You tell people to leave you reviews on your TripAdvisor. So when they're at your restaurant, when they're at your hotel, when they're on your tour, leave them a piece of paper that says, please review us on TripAdvisor. And then when they do leave you a response and a review, you're going to want to respond back to them. Thank them, say, I appreciate it. I'm so glad that you enjoyed this. And if they have negative a review, go above and beyond in trying to fix it. If they're out to lunch, realize that people will recognize that and they'll say, okay, this person doesn't know what's going on, and just go on. And once you do that, you'll start to see the benefits. You'll start to find yourself at the top of the reviews, and you'll start to see more and more people saying that they found you through TripAdvisor. I can guarantee it. So you definitely want to invest some time into this channel. Later on next week, when we go into the second webinar Wednesday, we're going to dive a little bit deeper into TripAdvisor and how you can use it. But I definitely think this is a channel that everyone needs to be aware of as it relates to their accounts. So it's also important that you just go to your account, set it up. You can press with the click of a button. If you're already listed, you can take claim of a page. From there, you can actually order a free sticker, which will actually allow you to put it up in your window, and it tells people to review you. And then you can also manage your reviews. You can get insights and information surrounding how people are interacting with your content, where you're showing up. You can download badges and widgets, a handful of different things that will really allow you to stand out and make your account something special. So that's really the foundation of what it takes to have a great online presence. TIANS actually offers a great service where they do a one-on-one mentorship for just $75, where you can actually reach out to them and they will help you craft a better listing on Nova Scotia Tourism's white site, novascotia.com. And you can actually ensure that your story that you're telling is more captivating, that the story that you're telling is more effective, and that it capitalizes on all of the different things that we talked about today. So again, I definitely recommend that you take advantage of those mentoring sessions. They're a great opportunity for tourism operators to get that one-on-one training that they need to tell their story in a more effective way. And they can provide you with the insights you need to even navigate further into some of the other programs that are being offered through Nova Scotia Tourism. So now that you have an understanding of what the foundation is, it's time to build a host. And that's what we're going to be talking about next week during the webinar Wednesday. We're going to talk about how you can take your social media channels to the next level as it relates to the stories that you're telling, but also some of the more strategic and tactical efforts as it relates to things like advertising, the impact of visual marketing. So things like your actual Instagram account, is that relevant to you? Should you be there? How can you use it? We're going to dive into some of these specifics that I really think are going to help take your account to the next level. So be sure to sign up and register for the next webinar Wednesday. If you enjoyed this, please pass it along to your friends. And if you guys have any questions, I do have a couple seconds here that I'd be happy to answer them. I know that a few of you have to jet because it is past 1 o'clock. But if you do have questions, feel free to drop me a line in the question section. I'd be happy to answer them. And I think Tiffany just has a few things that she would like to say before we wrap up.
That's perfect, Ross. In closing, we would just like to thank you again for taking on our webinar Wednesdays. This is really informative. I hope everybody took away something from this presentation today. And as Ross mentioned, we are going to be having another webinar next Wednesday. It'll be how to make your viewers your customers. So don't forget to register for that webinar. It can be found on our Eventbrite page. And I would also like to thank everybody for attending this webinar today. And if you have any questions, you can send it to me at tiffany@tourism.ca or fill out the survey that follows this webinar. If you have any questions, I can see that there are some coming through, so I will let Ross answer those. And like I said, email me if you have any other comments. Thanks, everybody.
So I see the question here from Paul as it relates to getting set up. I definitely recommend reaching out to Tiffany. She can definitely help you with that, getting channels like Hootsuite and things set up. Great comment, Tina. Tina just reiterated that if you visit someone's profile, make sure that you realize that everything that you push out there is public. So you need to recognize that, of course, 120%. Somebody asked, will the webinar be available? Yes, it will. There will be a link distributed. If you check into the chat forum right now, there's actually a YouTube channel in which TIANS runs that you will be able to access the content. From Stephen Lowe regarding the example of Second Fork and Mexicali, are both accounts Mexicali's accounts? I don't know. I'm not familiar with the Second Fork. If it's like a spin-off restaurant or something, it might be, which would be a strategic approach where you are retweeting your own content. But I don't believe they're the same company. But you could do that. A question from Anna. We are wondering if there's a central site where an operator can get all the points on how to interact with Google. I believe there's some documentation that has been created that is available through tourism. I would reach out to Tiffany again, and she would be happy, I'm sure, to provide you with that information. Carrie brings up a great point. She's mentioning that you cannot offer incentives for exchange for reviews, as it's against the TripAdvisor policies. 100%, I agree. What I recommend is, instead of saying, hey, if you review us, we'll give you 25% off, because that is sketchy and shouldn't be allowed, is that you just remind people to review you on TripAdvisor. So you have a little card on your table and it says, please review us on TripAdvisor if you liked us. You can't say, if you liked us and we'll give you 25% off. You simply ask them to review you. Great. Well, I think that's all the questions. If anybody does have any questions, feel free to bring them to the next webinar, which is next Wednesday. I'm at The Coolest Cool on Twitter. Or you can just give a quick Google search, Ross Simmonds, and you can find me. And if you have any questions, feel free to drop me a line as well. Again, like Tiffany said, thank you guys so much for coming out and enjoying the webinar. If you have any questions, or if there's anything I can ever do to help, feel free to drop me a line. Take care and enjoy the rest of your week.